Hello again, and welcome to my review of the video game Jedi Survivor. I just finished the game a few days ago and decided I would go ahead and make a video giving my overall thoughts on the game. So to begin with this, I figured I'd give a prelude of what I thought of the game's predecessor, Jedi Fallen Order. I did like Fallen Order a lot in terms of a game. I found the game pretty fun, presenting a challenge in terms of lightsaber combat. The story was definitely decent. I had some problems with it, but it was definitely more engaging than a lot of the other Disney Star Wars stuff that is put out nowadays. But overall, I had a fun time with Jedi Fallen Order and liked it way better than the Battlefront games, and trust me, I do not like those EA Battlefront games. So anyway, when they announced they were going to be making a sequel, I was relatively, looking forward to it. I wasn't super excited or anything like that, mostly because of the Star Wars content we've been getting has not helped with that excitement, but I was like, sure, I'll go ahead and check it out probably. And so, I did. So in terms of the game, I bought the game for the PlayStation 5 because I split a PlayStation 5 with my brother and I haven't really been able to use it too much, so I figured this was a good time to finally be able to use the PlayStation. I played the game on just the standard difficulty and ran the game in performance mode. And overall, my general thoughts before we get into the deeper details is I liked the game, I thought it was fairly good, and I did enjoy playing it. And I consider this to be one of the better Star Wars media to have come out in the last few years. Made me a bit more happy to go back to the galaxy far, far away. It was definitely fun to play, it kept my engagement, it actually made me want to play and complete the game. If a game can do that, it's definitely doing something a little right. And in terms of this, I will take this story / these characters and this game over most of the majority of the Star Wars stuff that Disney has released. But we'll get into that in a second. Okay, so now I'm going to be getting into the details, which means I'm going to be getting into spoilers of the story and other things. So if you do not want to be spoiled, then go ahead and click off this video and come back once you finish the main story. I've not 100%ed the game, just FYI when I say I've completed the game, I'm just saying I've completed the main story plus some of the side missions. So to start regarding the game, let's talk about the main story. So I wrote down here a synopsis in my notes, so let me go ahead and read that for you. Cal is basically now a rogue Jedi, fighting the Empire wherever he can while avoiding too much attention to make sure he can fight another day. He soon finds out very early on in the game that for all he has done, it hasn't helped too much. And one of his main struggles at the beginning and midpoint of the story is seeing if he can stay motivated or find a strong reason to continue to fight against the Empire, or if he should just give up. While thinking about this, he soon needs to go to Kobo to fix his ship from the last mission, and while on Kobo, he discovers an ancient High Republic Jedi temple. He soon discovers something big, that there is a planet hidden in the Kobo Abyss, which is this area that if you fly your ship into it, you'll more than likely die and get destroyed. But there is a planet deep in that abyss that is hidden from everyone, including the Empire. And Cal and the rest of the characters sees this as an opportunity to, one, have a safe place where the Empire cannot find them, and also find a place where maybe they can start building a rebellion to fight against the Empire. So soon Cal embarks on a journey to find out how they can reach this planet and use it for good, while meeting new and old friends along the way. And that's basically the plot synopsis in a nutshell. So now let's talk about the characters of the game. I find the characters to be quite better developed and more interesting than the majority of the Disney Plus Star Wars stuff. For example, Mandalorian, I'm not a fan of that show. I find it entertaining, but not because I think it's good, because I think it's just silly. I don't really like the characters in Mando, and I don't think the main character, Mando, is much of a character. There's not much to him. Any kind of arc or any kind of story he had, I think really just maybe it was in the first season if there was any, and in the last two seasons there's not really much. Well, you can maybe argue in the second season his goal is to get Baby Yoda to a Jedi to train with his Khan. In the third season of Mando, I don't think he has much of an arc at all. I think Mando is just there. He's like, just here I am, just, doing whatever. The Obi-Wan show I find massively disappointing. I think that fundamentally just breaks the character of Obi-Wan in quite a few ways, and I find the story to be so stupid. If you're interested to hear more of my thoughts, I have part 1 of my Obi-Wan review up on my channel. I'll link it and put it in the top corner. Part 2 and 3 will be coming soon at some point, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, in terms of most of the Disney Star Wars stuff, most of the characters that they have created for their show, for the most part, are not interesting or engaging. I'm happy to say, though, with Jedi Survivor, that the characters are way more engaging. It's not perfect, but at least it kept my interest, and I was actually invested in their stories. Most of the characters in Jedi Survivor actually had a place and point. They're not just there for the sake of king jangling or reference, which is something Disney Star Wars loves to do, especially in, what was it, Book of Boba Fett? Was it the 6th episode, where they had, like, Luke and Cad Bane and Ahsoka and a bunch of other reference characters? Like, it's something Disney does. They just like to jangle keys in front and say, do you remember this character, right? But in this one, it actually felt like the characters actually had merit. They actually were there for a reason and actually had a place in the story, and not just there for the sake of, hey, look, do you remember this character? I mean, heck, the story starts off with the gang and the main characters from the first game separated. They're not together, so that's kind of a small risk, I would say. The acting from the crew, for the most part, is great, except I would say the actor for Dagan Gera, but we'll get to him later in this review. And I find the most engaging character in the game to be Cal himself, because Cal is basically dealing with this fact that he's trying to fight the Empire, but it doesn't seem to be helping, and he starts to question whether or not his actions are worth any merit, or if he should continue the fight, or if he should just settle down like Grease. I think one of the best scenes to establish Cal's motivation was the scene he has talking with Grease at the saloon when they first meet. You know, Grease is telling him, why doesn't he just lay low and just find, a life and settle down? And Cal basically says that he feels like the people who sacrifice themselves for the sake of the fight against the Empire or evil, like his master and other characters, that sacrifice will mean nothing if he doesn't continue on that legacy of the fight.
I know you all had your reasons for leaving, but walking away isn't an option for me. I have to hold the line.
And where's that gotten you, Cal? I wish things were different, but you keep losing people. And you yourself said that the Empire's growing stronger every day. Now maybe it's time for you to be something more than a lightsaber. Think about yourself. Settle down. Find a home.
What home, Grease? There is no home. Home was the Order. It was my teacher. It was everyone I lost. What does their sacrifice mean if I go and I just give up and stick my head in the sand?
It's a compelling and better understandable motivation for Cal, and that's why I think he's the most engaging character in the story, and I do think that scene is one of the strongest scenes in terms of establishing why he does what he does. And when Cal comes across Tanalorr and finding out about this planet, his motivation somewhat changes, but it doesn't change to a point where either it doesn't make sense or doesn't fit with character, which is what I feel a lot of the Disney Star Wars stuff does. For example, Mando in Season 3. He just decides out of nowhere to serve Bo-Katan. There's like that scene in like the second to last episode of the season, episode 7, where he basically says like, I'm going to now serve you. And he's like, where did this come from? Why is this happening now? It's just, it comes out of nowhere. But in this, Cal says like, maybe we can both use the planet to settle down and create a safe haven for people, but also like build up a rebellion so that we can fight the Empire, because they're just going to be around no matter what, and maybe we should still fight to take them down.
Tanalorr's a fortress. We should use it for the hidden path. Gather allies, train. They'd never see us coming.
So he still finds a way to work his main motivation into the changes into the plot and the discoveries in the plot. Cal also has a second small side plot in regards when he comes across Dagan Gera and sees him turn to the dark side. Cal is afraid of, becoming that he'll become obsessed with his fight against the Empire or something like that and lose his way, lose his Jedi way, and lose himself.
Is that what troubles you? Losing yourself?
Yeah.
And Grease has decided to settle down and now runs the saloon because he just wants to live a normal life. Basically says he's been in a lot of fights and he's afraid of losing something that he can't replace, so he's just gonna settle down and just try to live the remainder of his life. And it's also understandable too, because with the strength and scale of the Empire, it just seems like it might not be worth it to do this fight. It's just not worth the risk. And his motivation and Cal's motivation come into conflict with that previously mentioned scene. In terms of getting him back into like helping Cal and going along with his missions, because Tanalorr is a planet in which he can settle down on and actually not have to worry about the Empire at all, because they won't be able to find him. So it actually lines up with his motivation in terms of why he wants to join. And again, I give them props for that, because it's better than most of the Disney Star Wars stuff. We'll quickly go over the other characters here. Marin, in terms of the story, has gone her separate way. She's gone to explore the galaxy and find herself in all the places and people she encountered, but she's still around to help and still wants to fight the Empire. In terms of Seer, she is now no longer afraid or using the dark side like she was in the first game. She's now let go of her fear and now embracing the light side of the Force. She's trying to rebuild the Jedi archives and trying to build back up the Order with Cordova. Cordova is actually in the game, and that was kind of a nice surprise to see. So in terms of her motivation slash her change that she went through the first game, it carries on pretty much in the second game and remains consistent. Ravis, there's not much to him. He's mostly just a villain antagonist in the story, but he has a great voice actor for him, and he has traits that are such as, you know, honor, loyalty, and getting a good warrior's death.
You're still just Dagan's servant.
Time does not diminish my loyalties. Without a code, you can only serve yourself.
Last character we'll talk about is Bode, which is like Cal's friend through the majority of the story until the end. His involvement in the entire story is mostly tied to his motivation regarding his daughter. He wants to keep his daughter safe. He wants his daughter to not be in risk of being hunted or captured by the Empire. He just wants his daughter saved. Pretty much everything he does in terms of the story is in regards to doing it for his girl. His backstory is that he was once a Jedi who escaped the Purged and used what he learned while in the Clone Wars to escape and try to hide from the Empire, but eventually the Inquisitors found him, killed his wife, and basically he and his daughter escaped. And he didn't see that he could run forever, so basically he cut a deal with another character, Denvik, which is one of the ISBs, one of the higher-ups in the Empire, to basically say, like, I'll make myself useful to you as long as you keep me hidden. In terms of his motivation, like I said, it's just his daughter. He will do anything for his daughter to keep his daughter safe, including some bad things. Not necessarily because he's evil, but because just his daughter is kind of his obsession. You know, that's a plot in the story, that's a focus in the story in terms of one of the themes, like obsession and how it can get it to your head and also, like, change you. And I think that's what they're tying in regards to Bode and his daughter. He has an obsession with keeping his daughter safe, and it drives him to do some bad things. That's the majority of the characters. We'll get to the other ones later. In terms of the dialogue, majority of it is fine. Some of it is cringy or seems overacted or very cliched.
If Centauri had only stood with me, we could have convinced the Council that Tanalor was worth the sacrifice. Now she's gone. Ravis is gone. The Order is gone, and I am free! There's immense power in such emotions, but you were too weak.
But some of it is okay, and some of the dialogue they say just normal things rather than being over-exaggerated or over-dramatic. And the fact that they have good voice acting helps, because if it was mixed with bad voice acting, the dialogue could have been so much worse. Most of the cringe lines and over-dramatic lines comes from Dagan, but we'll talk about that later when we talk about him specifically. But yeah, some of the dialogue is a bit cringe or overly dramatic, but a majority of it just seems fine. And a lot of it is actually pretty funny, too. There are droids in the game from, like, the Clone Wars era, you know, the battle droids and the super battle droids. And they actually have some pretty funny dialogue that you can hear.
Take a look at that view. Is that a giant crater? Wow. I got it so easy. Guard the cliff, crush the locals, look at the scenery. Nobody's getting past me, not without a blaster hole in them. I wonder if I'll get promoted for doing such a good job. Then I'll get the other droids to guard the cliff. Oh, but then I won't see the scenery. Now that's a dilemma.
Dilemma solved.
Alright, so now let's talk about some of the mechanics of the game, some of the new mechanics that I'm pretty sure were not in the first game. My memory may not be super exact because I haven't played Fallen Order for 3 years. So if there's some of these mechanics that I think are new were in the first game, then I apologize in advance. But let's go ahead and talk about them. So one of the main new mechanics is the new stances. So in the first game, I'm pretty sure you only had single and dual lightsaber as your stances. But in this game, they introduced the dual wield, as in holding one lightsaber in each hand, blaster stance using a blaster, and the crossguard stance, which is like a heavy hitting stance. Each of these stances have their advantages and disadvantages. Like dual wield deals faster attacks, but you don't have as big of a defense. The crossguard stance deals heavier damage and has a lot more stamina for defense, but is slower, and the attacks are not as fast, so you're more open to attacks. You know, in the blaster stance, you can hit an enemy from afar because you have a gun. And I do like how in terms of the upgrade menu, they have upgrades for each stance. So that way you can get better moves and maybe get each stance more of an advantage. And even in regards when you fully upgrade all your stances, you still have advantages and disadvantages regarding each. Personally, I think the best overall is either the crossguard or the double-bladed stance, just because in terms of damage and things, it deals the most. Probably in terms of if I had to pick between the two, probably the double, just because the crossguard stance does have the disadvantage of being slower because it's like a heavier weaponry. But each one is fun to be able to use, and it honestly creates a challenge and adds more playtime to the experience when you want to play and get used to each of the individual stances.
Holy crap. What? Holy shit.
Alright, let's talk about the new Force abilities. So in this game, you have the Force raise and lower. It's like on the controller for the PlayStation, it's like R1 and like triangle, circle, or X, sorry. The circle basically uses mind tricks, so you can actually trick enemies into fighting for you if they're caught off guard enough. It won't work on every single enemy, of course, because some minds are stronger than others, but when you have an enemy that can, you can use it to your advantage. And then you, of course, use the Force raise and lower. You can use it on enemies, but you can also use it on your environment to get to new places and find new areas to explore. There's also the new dash mechanic that is used to get to new areas as well. You have the slow/dark side ability, which I don't know if that was in the first game. I know the first game had like slow down, but I think you could only use it on a single enemy. In this game, you have like an overall radius effect of slowing down your enemies, but it transitions to being like a dark side power later in the game that becomes a permanent power in the game even after you complete the main story. There's also the new double lift feature, where like when you like force pull an enemy and hold them into the air. Now I think you can do 2 at a time. I don't think that was in the first game. Yeah, most of these abilities are added and they give you an advantage in combat, new combos you can do, or help you explore new areas. So let's talk about the added customization. So I do like the new added customization because I think in the first game you could customize your lightsaber hilt, but you couldn't customize materials or color of your lightsaber hilt. You could customize BD's colors and you can customize the Mantis colors. In this game, you can now customize more about each of your stuff. You can customize your saber more, your gun, BD, or you can customize not only like the different parts like the emitter, the switches, the grips, etc., and the pommel, but you can actually customize the material your saber's made out of and the color it is. So you can make your lightsaber different hilt, different colors, as well as different parts. So added customization there. In regards to the blade colors, I like the fact that there's different sounds. You can actually notice it. If you choose the different colors, you'll notice the sounds are actually slightly different. So I like that key detail. They didn't have to do that, but they bothered to do so. In regards to BD, you can change the way he looks as well, not only just in terms of color, but like his legs, his head, his photoreceptors, his antennas, things like that. And also same with the gun. You can customize the way your gun looks and the materials it's made out of. Something else they added to this game was the way Cal looks. You can now change features about his hair, his facial hair, the clothes he wears. You can change the individual clothes. There was clothes customization in the first game, but I think it was like overall suits or overall outfits. With this new game, you can customize like the undershirt, the overshirt, the pants, the boots, things like that. You can customize individual pieces of clothing. There's also another mechanic they introduced in the game. Whenever you're traversing levels with friends like Bode or Marin, you can use their powers on an enemy. You basically use R1 and then press circle on the PlayStation, and you can use their power. Like with Bode's, it's basically he will kick a enemy, and then he'll throw like a little charge on the ground, like electrical charge, to keep other enemies in their place. And then Marin has a similar feature where she uses her magic to keep enemies in their place, so you can attack them without them blocking or having a parry. There's also a new grapple hook Cal gets in the game. He gets this like little anchor point that he can use to traverse other areas and climb to new areas. Reminded me of Just Cause when I got there. I was like, oh, this is Just Cause Jedi edition. I kind of wish you could use the grapple hook in combat. That's not something you can use in combat. There's a new BD mechanic. So BD in the first game was used to basically scan enemies and update your tactical guide as well as scan environments. Now with BD, you have a few things. You have his like binocular view, so you can actually see further away and actually make waypoints on your map using BD's binocular view. But BD also has the two new things, the Kobo Sprayer, which is again used to traverse and help you get out of your environment and find new areas to explore. And also he has the electrical shooting thing, the electrical ball shooting thing. Something new that's in this game is the riding the animals. I'm pretty sure this was not in the first game. You can ride some of the bigger animals in the game. One of the mechanics that was in the first and second game is that there's these inclines that are wet or slippery and you can't climb those. Well, with one of the animals you can. They don't slip and slide on those. So that way you can get to new areas you haven't explored or other areas faster. Something else that's new in these games is the shop. So as you explore the games, you can collect things like forms of currency like Pyrite, data disk, Jedi scrolls, things like that. And you can use these at certain shops on certain planets to unlock new customizations or upgrades. For example, you can use the Pyrite at Doma shop, and Doma basically sells new clothing or new looks for Cal. And then one in particular is the bounty hunt put. So you eventually come across like a bounty hunter and you fight these bounty hunters that are trying to come after your bounty. And you can use that to unlock upgrades. For example, one of the ones I like is that you can unlock an ability using the bounty pucks you collect to slice droids, so that way they fight on your side. So yeah, it's a nice little touch, and it gives you a reason to continue to play after you complete the main story, because you can unlock new combat mechanics and like try them out and get better at combat. Another new thing is conversations. I think this was in the first game, but I think they've expanded it more on this game. Because in regards to conversations, when you talk to people, you can actually unlock side missions. And the conversations between each character changes as you progress throughout the story. You can talk to a character first and then go to a main mission and then come back, and then they'll have something new to say or maybe even a new side mission to give you. And something else is that when you talk to these characters, they can come back to Pyloon's Saloon and add things. For example, you meet this like DJ/music producer, and then you tell them about Pyloon's, and they go back to Pyloon's, and now they DJ the place, and now there's music in the saloon. Another thing is side missions. Basically, they're called like rumors in the game. Most of them seem to be on Kobo, and there is a few others on the other planets. I think there were like collectibles in like bosses in the first game, but I don't think there were actually side missions. I think you just had the main missions and like just collectibles/things to fight. In this game, you actually have side missions you can do. You know, there's like the Jedi temples, you know, that Z tells you about. And there's some also really cool side missions, like there's one where you need to find missing prospectors and you actually have to fight a Rancor. Pretty fun mission and a nice combat challenge. And they're just some like side little things that you come across, like you can be exploring and then there's these characters that are getting attacked by an enemy and you can save them and they're thankful and then they go back to the saloon and things like that. Something else that's new is the combat challenges. Like there's these fragments in the Force you come across. The first one you come across is on Jeddah, and basically it's like a combat challenge with like certain limitations. You're like taken to the practice arena in the Force. The one on Jeddah is that you have to defeat the enemies using the single blade stance and can't use any other stances. I like the new menu, like in terms of the upgrade menu, it looks a little different than the first one, and I love the sound design for the menu. I love like when you enter upgrade menu and like the sounds it makes when you explore each one and when you upgrade. It's really nice sound design and really distinct.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The game also has, I think, new enemy types. There's the shield troopers. I don't remember if that was in the first game. I don't think so. I don't remember it being in the first game. It might have been, but I think the jetpack troopers are new. There were jetpack enemies in the first game, like the bounty hunters, but jetpack troopers I don't think were a thing in the first game, so that's a new enemy type. There's also the new, like, big Empire droids, like the very, I forget what the name of them is. Sorry, I don't remember names really well. You also have fight Magna Guards, which I'm pretty sure was not in the first game. I don't remember fighting Magna Guards in the first game, so that's another new enemy type you deal with. And then there's the droidicas, which I would say are one of the more trickier ones. Dealing with droidicas is pretty tricky because they move everywhere all the time, and if you get too close, they try to melee hit you, and then they have like the constant blaster fire. So I find the droidicas to be one of the more tricky enemies to deal with in the game, and I'm still trying to develop a good tactic to defeat them. Hey, Alright, so let's talk about level design. Level design pretty much is pretty solid. I don't have much wrong with the level design. It's pretty straightforward on where you need to go and what you need to do to get to that location. Just the standard stuff that you get from the first game, plus the new added things like the grapple hook and the dash mechanic, etc. You know, and as you progress through the game, there's certain areas you can't explore because you haven't unlocked that upgrade yet. You know, like, for example, there's the dash mechanic. You can't go to certain areas without that mechanic. So the game gives you a reason to come back and explore that area once you've unlocked those certain mechanics that allows you to explore. The level design is very beautiful, really well done, really detailed. It's very pretty to look at, and a lot of it looks very awesome. There's some slight bugs in the levels, but we'll get to that in the later portion of this review. In terms of my favorite levels are basically the first one where like you have to fight the excavation machine with Marin, where you're traversing the environment and there's constant like TIE fighters coming around trying to shoot you and the machine's trying to get you. It's really fast-paced, it's intense. There's some nice dialogue between Marin and Cal as they're traversing the level trying to avoid the machinery and fight it. It's a really cool level and one of the best levels in the game. I also like the level where you get to play as Seer for a bit, not only because she has decent new abilities and also is quite a bit OP. Like her powers is like, that combat is quite a bit easier. But also, like, there's defending the base, you know, like the walkers come in and stuff, and it looks very epic and is very fun. In terms of my other two favorite levels, I would say, or three, I would say also being able to fight Darth Vader. In the first game, you have like a small encounter with him, but you don't really get to fight him. In this game, you actually do get to fight him as a level, so I really like that, because I was kind of hoping there would be something like that either with an Inquisitor or Darth Vader. And I would say also the level when you get to go on the speeder and chase after Bode is also pretty fun, and because there's also that part that you see like in the trailer where Cal lifts one of the troopers off the speeder and like throws him into an incoming TIE fighter. It's pretty like, wow. And also the observatory, like the observatory up high, up in the sky, I like that level too. And also, in terms of the levels, I really like the bosses. In terms of the bosses fights, the hardest for me overall, and I rate the hardest based on like how many times I've died and what was the hardest to get used to in terms of knowing their moves and fighting, it was Ravis. Ravis was the hardest boss for me. But I do like the bosses because every time I get defeated, it gives me more of a competitive spirit and me wanting to complete the challenge and actually beat the boss, giving me motivation to beat the boss. So I really like that about the game. Some slight other compliments to give about the game. I like the sound design, like I said, for the upgrade menu and things. It's really cool and unique. And also, like with the lightsabers, not only in regards to the different colors, but also like the crossguard stance has a different sound to the other stances, so they bothered to do that as well. You know, and also the startup music, which is the same as in Fallen Order, but it's very recognizable now and gets you into the mood to play the game. Now, as much as I've been praising this game, it is not a perfect game, and I do have some issues or complaints with the game. So let's go ahead and get into those. Let's talk about Dagan Gera. For me, he really wasn't much of a character and really had no overall impact on the story. He was more of a plot device. He's more a character that is there for the sake of Cal discovering Tanalorr and like the High Republic stuff. But in terms of Dagan Gera, he's not much of an engaging character. Basically, his motivation is that he found this planet Tanalorr and wanted to build a Jedi temple, and he wanted the Council's permission to do so. But while that was happening, they get invaded by Ravengers. He wanted to defend it, but the Council ordered him to retreat and abandon Tanalorr, and he did not. Dagan's obsession with Tanalorr grew too great to the point where basically he was willing to kill his fellow Jedi for it. And basically it was Centauri Kree that defeated him and put him in the Bacta tank. Which, by the way, speaking of the Bacta tank, does Bacta tank have de-aging abilities? Because I know it has restorative and health abilities. That's the point of a Bacta tank, but like, does it stop you from aging? Because I'm assuming it's been hundreds of years. Like, does that fit in lore? Because I didn't know Bacta tanks could do that. Yeah, his motivation, I just don't find that compelling, and I just don't find him engaging as a character. He's just a bad guy. Once he comes out of the Bacta tank, his motivation is to create an army and, like, purge the galaxy with fire, and it's just like, it's just the standard galaxy-ruling stuff, you know? It's just not interesting at all. It's just the standard take over the universe kind of deal. And it kind of doesn't fit. It's like, where does this come from? Why did he translate from wanting to create a temple and train Jedi to wanting to do the same thing but like rule the galaxy as well? And he also has some of the more cringy dialogue, like the standard bad guy dialogue that you've come to expect from a lot of like generic cliched villains.
You dare stand against me? But sending a droid instead of facing me yourself, such cowardice.
You murdered your fellow Jedi.
I struck down those who stood against me. How could you let the galaxy fall to this unworthy machine of an empire? You think yourself a survivor, but you are a failure.
It also doesn't help in regards to the actor for Dagan Gera. I think it's less maybe to do with the actor himself and more just a casting choice. I just don't think that whoever was cast to play Dagan was maybe the right choice. I think maybe there should have been another actor that maybe more fits the role. And I just don't find the acting for Dagan Gera compelling. I just find it a bit overly dramatic, a bit cliched, and the cringy, overdramatic dialogue does not help either. He just more is there to serve as an obstacle to get in the way of Cal from finding the compass and Tanalorr. That's it. And it could maybe have been done in an engaging way, but I just find what they did with regards to him just not engaging and overall, I just find the character of Dagan just uninteresting and forgettable. Also, in regards to when Cal and Bode have the conversation in the base, what does Cal mean when he said he lured him here to take down the base? That's out of nowhere. Cal didn't come here to take down the base, he came here to get Bode. That's it. I don't know why he brings this up, or like why Bode would lure him here to take down the base. That's not what he wants to do, nor is that what he does at all. He doesn't take down the base. I thought that Bode told the Empire about Denvik, so that way the Empire comes and basically takes over / takes down the base. So yeah, it could be that I'm just not understanding it right. I've watched the scenes a few times, but I seem to be missing something, so it's too hard for me to tell whether I'm missing something or if it's just bad writing. I find just basically the part from Bode's betrayal to the end of the story to be not as strong as the rest of it. Plot gets very janky and a lot of it becomes very unclear to me. There's also some other stupid moments in regards to the plot, like there's on the last level when you're about to fight Bode. Bode's daughter is trying to convince him to listen to Cal and Marin, and then like Bode pulls the floor down and like literally almost kills his daughter. Like literally she was very close to falling. It's like, what the heck are you doing, Bode? Like that's really reckless. Like what I would have done personally is I would have had Bode, rather than him just pull the flooring down, I would have had him force push the daughter back safely and then break the pathway. That's what I think would have been a little better. Another thing is that there are two big moments in this game that I think arguably should have killed Cal. Like one of them is when he first discovers the temple. It's that part in the game when you're trying to find the new gyro for your ship and then BD like breaks through the floor and then like you fall down with him. That was pretty hard. I feel like as much he would have a broken bone or be very heavily injured. Because I know he's a Jedi, but that doesn't make you like much more stronger or more resilient to things like that. And then the second moment is when Bode and him have their first fight, and then Bode pushes him off, shoots him, and then Cal is trying to lessen his fall, but he pretty much lands on the ground almost at full speed, and like he doesn't break a bone or severely injured. I know he gets knocked out, but like he's not injured at all. Those little moments kind of took me out a bit, because I don't find it believable that Cal would get up so easily from both of those moments. I know in regards to the second moment he got knocked out, but even then, like, he's not injured at all. No broken bones, no scrapes, no cuts, nothing. Like, he literally fell off a cliff, like, almost at full speed. I feel at most he either should be dead, or at least somewhat injured, like injured to where he needs time to recover. In regards to another problem I have with the plot, there's a big MacGuffin in it. So after Bode and his daughter escape with the compass and it seems like they're never going to find Tanalorr, the message that Kree left for Dagan, she just happens to have a little endpoint, like a little ending part to the message that Dagan and the others just happen to miss and just randomly come across. I just find it extremely convenient that, oh, look, it's in this message and we just didn't happen to see it until this exact point where we needed it. I just found it like a MacGuffin, like basically something in there to continue the plot. Oh, we need the plot to continue. What do we do? It's just at the end of the message and no one happened to read it until now. Problem solved. Right, so those were my main problems in terms of the story. Now let's talk about the levels. So in regards to the level design, I do find it sometimes at points to be a bit repetitive and a bit monotonous. Next, let's talk about bugs and glitches, because there are some in this game. Now, I bought it for the PlayStation 5, and my bugs and glitches have been somewhat minimal, but I do know for some other ones, especially in regards to the PC port, that there have been major ones. I remember watching a friend stream, he was streaming the game, and like Cal just basically just randomly like jumped up like 50 feet, like it was a big glitch, something just launched him into the air. And also, there's like rendering errors I've seen in the game, like textures not loading in properly, making like clipping happening, you know, like hands going into like clothing or hands just like going into other characters, so not proper renderings and things like that. I've seen some clips where like there's this cutscene with Dagan, but like Dagan isn't rendered at all, so Cal is literally talking to no one. So yeah, the game is definitely buggy. It's not buggy to the point where it's unplayable or where it's like crashing, but it's definitely not fully optimized and definitely needs some fixes. On the similar topic in regards to performance, that's where I had the most issues in regards to my playthrough. There were certain moments where the frame rate would drop below 30, it would drop to like maybe 20. I had it originally on to, you know, like detailed mode, but the frame rate was down so much to the point where I had to put it to performance mode. And performance mode doesn't drop the detail of the game significantly, but it still has to drop it, and the detail mode just can't seem to keep up. It's not optimized. Even when you set it to performance mode, these performance issues still happen depending on the environment you're in. Mostly if it's a very big environment with a lot of detail is where I noticed the biggest performance issues, so hopefully that can be fixed in a patch, because I don't remember having these issues in regards to Fallen Order. Another thing I want to say is in regards to the cutscene quality, I find the quality in regards to the cutscenes to be okay. I find it to be a bit lacking in quality sometimes. That's just a personal preference with me. Like, to me, it doesn't seem like next gen. It seems like maybe like a PS4 Pro level rather than PS5 in terms of the texture and quality of the cutscenes. But it's not like a super big deal. It's just something personally I was like, I wish it was maybe looked a little better in the cutscenes. All right, so let's go ahead and conclude this review. So overall, would I recommend the game? Yeah, if you're like me and someone who has not been engaged with a lot of the Star Wars content in regards to the movies or the shows, I would definitely recommend this game because this has been the most I've been engaged in a Star Wars piece of media in a while. It's very fun. The combat is the most investing thing. It's the thing that makes you want to play more and like get better at combat and unlock new abilities. Like I said, I find the story more engaging and the characters more engaging than most of the Disney Plus stuff. The game is fun. Level design is pretty good. Game is okay optimized, but still needs to fix a few bugs and glitches. The game gives you reasons to play it after you complete the main story, like unlocking new areas to explore, or getting better at combat, or practicing with the different stances. So yeah, overall I recommend the game. In terms of a score, I would say, it's hard to say, I would say maybe an 8 at most, if not a 7. I'm still trying to decide. I originally gave the first game a 7, and I do think this game overall was a little better, so I think I'll give it an 8. I'm not willing to go higher than that because of the issues I have addressed. And I would be open for a third game, and I think there is talk in the news of them doing a third game. Alright, so I think that's going to go ahead and conclude this review. If you enjoyed this review, please go ahead and leave a like, and also subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future. Just as an update in regards to content, this might be the last video I post for a few weeks because I've got a wedding coming up, like a wedding video I have to make, so I need to prep for that and get prepared for that, and then once I'm done with that wedding, I can get back to focusing a bit more on making content here. So anyway, thank you again for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next review. Take care.